Welcome to the golden age of Hollywood, a time of glamour, glitz, and iconic stars. But behind the sparkle and silver screen, many of Hollywood's legends were notorious for their temper, arrogance, and downright rude behavior. Today, we're counting down the 15 biggest jerks of the golden age of Hollywood. You might be surprised who made this infamous list. Errol Flynn was the ultimate swashbuckling hero of the golden age, charming audiences with films like Captain Blood and The Adventures of Robin Hood. But off-screen, he was a completely different man. Flynn was infamous for his wild lifestyle, constant partying, heavy drinking, and a long list of affairs. He had a reputation for being arrogant, reckless, and even cruel to those around him, especially crew members and assistants. Many co-workers described him as a bully who thrived on chaos. Despite all this, his good looks and charisma kept audiences loyal, and the studios protected his image. But behind the curtain, Flynn was one of Hollywood's most difficult and controversial stars. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was one of the most powerful and glamorous actresses of the golden age, with a career that spanned decades and included hits like Mildred Pierce, for which she won an Oscar. But behind her polished public image was a woman known for being cold, calculating, and incredibly difficult to work with. She had a reputation for being controlling on set, often clashing with co-stars and directors over creative decisions. Many considered her manipulative and obsessed with maintaining her image at any cost. Her most infamous legacy comes from her adopted daughter Christina's tell-all book, Mommy Dearest, which accused Crawford of emotional and physical abuse. Though some dispute the claims, the book painted a disturbing portrait of a woman who demanded perfection and punished anything less. To many who worked with her, Joan Crawford was not just a diva, she was a nightmare behind the scenes. Cary Grant. Cary Grant is remembered as one of the most charming and stylish leading men of Hollywood's golden age, with unforgettable roles in films like North by Northwest and Bringing Up Baby. But behind that suave, gentlemanly image was a man many insiders found difficult to deal with. Grant was known to be extremely controlling, especially about how he was portrayed on screen. He had a sharp tongue and could be dismissive of co-stars, directors, and crew members he didn't respect or deemed unimportant. His perfectionism sometimes led to impatience and mood swings on set, creating a tense working environment. While he was admired for his professionalism, his ego often got in the way of collaboration. Several colleagues described him as cold, calculating, and obsessed with control. Despite his charming screen persona, Cary Grant's off-screen behavior made him one of the more demanding and, at times, unpleasant figures of classic Hollywood. Mae West. Mae West was a trailblazer in early Hollywood, bold, witty, and unafraid to push boundaries. Her sharp one-liners and unapologetic sexuality made her a box office sensation in the 1930s. But behind the glamorous persona was a woman known for being fiercely controlling and incredibly difficult to work with. West demanded complete creative control over her films, often rewriting scripts, overriding directors, and insisting that everything revolve around her. She had little patience for criticism and would regularly fire people who challenged her authority. While some admired her confidence, many in the industry found her arrogance overwhelming. Co-stars often complained of being sidelined or treated as props to support her image. Despite her comedic genius, Mae West's refusal to compromise made her a divisive figure in Hollywood. She wasn't just a strong woman in a man's world, she was a boss who didn't care who she stepped on to stay on top. John Wayne. John Wayne, often called the Duke, was the ultimate symbol of rugged American masculinity, starring in legendary westerns and war films like True Grit and The Searchers. But behind the iconic roles, Wayne was a deeply polarizing figure. Known for his blunt attitude and towering ego, he often clashed with directors, co-stars, and anyone who didn't share his worldview. His strong political opinions, especially his outspoken conservatism and controversial remarks on race and American history, offended many in the industry. Some colleagues described him as a bully on set, dismissive of younger actors and resistant to change. He had a tendency to dominate scenes and would sometimes demand rewrites to ensure he remained the focus. While fans loved his on-screen presence, others found working with him extremely difficult. For many, John Wayne wasn't just a Hollywood legend, he was a force of nature who didn't care who he steamrolled to get his way. Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich was the very definition of glamour, mystery, and elegance in Hollywood's golden age. With her husky voice, sharp wit, and androgynous style, she broke boundaries and captivated audiences worldwide. But behind the allure, Dietrich was known to be extremely vain, demanding, and difficult to work with. She maintained a strict image both on and off camera, controlling lighting, wardrobe, and even how her co-stars appeared in relation to her. Many directors and actors found her arrogant and dismissive, often complaining that she belittled others on set if they failed to meet her impossible standards. Dietrich expected full creative control and would not tolerate disagreement, sometimes walking off set mid-shoot. While her talent was undeniable, her perfectionism and need for dominance made her a challenging collaborator. To many in the industry, working with Marlene Dietrich meant surrendering to her rules, or facing her wrath. Bette Davis. Bette Davis was undeniably one of the most talented and influential actresses of the Golden Age, with iconic performances in films like All About Eve and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. However, her off-screen reputation was nearly as legendary as her acting. Known for her fiery temper and sharp tongue, Davis had a long history of feuds, most famously with Joan Crawford. She was fiercely independent, never afraid to challenge studio executives, directors, or co-stars. While many admired her determination and refusal to play by Hollywood's rules, others saw her as arrogant and combative. On set, she demanded excellence and had little tolerance for those she considered unprofessional or unprepared. Crew members often described her as intimidating, and actors who couldn't keep up with her intensity found themselves quickly dismissed. Bette Davis was a force of nature, brilliant, bold, but unquestionably difficult to work with. Hedi Lamar. Hedi Lamar was one of the most beautiful faces of classic Hollywood, captivating audiences in films like Algiers and Samson and Delilah. But her talents extended far beyond the screen. She was also a brilliant inventor, co-developing a technology that would later become the foundation for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. However, despite her intellect and screen presence, Lamar was known to be cold, self-absorbed, and difficult to work with. Many of her co-stars and crew members described her as distant and dismissive, often treating others as if they were beneath her. She had little patience for those who didn't meet her high expectations and frequently made colleagues feel unwelcome or inferior. Her need for control and perfectionism created tension on set, and she often clashed with directors. While her genius and beauty made her unforgettable, Hedi Lamar's aloof and superior attitude earned her a reputation as one of Hollywood's most difficult stars. Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes was a legendary figure in Hollywood, a billionaire, aviation pioneer, and powerful film producer behind movies like Hell's Angels and The Outlaw. But his influence came at a cost. Hughes was notoriously controlling and obsessive, micromanaging every aspect of production, from casting to costume design. He was especially known for manipulating and mistreating the actresses he cast, often grooming young women for stardom, only to abandon their careers when they no longer interested him. His perfectionism led to endless delays and reshoots, frustrating directors, writers, and actors alike. Over time, his behavior became increasingly erratic due to mental health struggles, including extreme paranoia and reclusiveness. He would disappear for months, leaving production stalled. Many who worked under him described the experience as suffocating and demeaning. Though a genius in some areas, Howard Hughes made life on set unbearable, and his power ensured few dared to speak out. Katherine Hepburn. Katherine Hepburn is now celebrated as one of the greatest actresses in film history, known for her fierce independence, sharp intellect, and unforgettable performances in classics like The Philadelphia Story and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. But during her prime, Hepburn had a reputation for being incredibly stubborn, outspoken, and difficult to work with. She refused to play by Hollywood's rules, often challenging directors, questioning scripts, and ignoring studio executives. Her bluntness came off as arrogance to many, and she made no effort to hide her disdain for the press or traditional female roles. On set, she was known to dominate conversations and override creative decisions, which rubbed co-stars and filmmakers the wrong way. Some admired her confidence, others saw her as condescending and cold. While Hepburn's legacy remains iconic, her uncompromising attitude and refusal to conform earned her as many enemies in Hollywood as it did admirers. Lana Turner. Lana Turner was one of the most glamorous stars of the 1940s and 50s, known for her beauty, dramatic roles, and high-profile personal life. Discovered as a teenager, she quickly rose to fame with films like The Postman Always Rings Twice, but her off-screen reputation often overshadowed her talent. Turner was widely known in Hollywood for her diva-like behavior. She frequently threw tantrums on set, demanded special treatment, and treated studio staff and assistants with open disrespect. Crew members described her as temperamental and moody, with little patience for delays or criticism. Her personal life, filled with scandals, affairs, and a famously tragic murder scandal involving her daughter, kept her constantly in the headlines. Directors often had to cater to her ego to avoid production delays. While Lana Turner's star power was undeniable, those who worked behind the scenes often found her entitled, exhausting, and extremely difficult to manage. Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart is remembered as one of the greatest actors of Hollywood's golden age, known for his tough, no-nonsense characters in classics like Casablanca, The Maltese Falcon, and The Big Sleep. With his gravelly voice and cool demeanor, he became a symbol of the hard-boiled American male. However, behind the scenes, Bogart was far less polished than the roles he played. He was known to be impatient, sarcastic, and at times, openly rude to co-stars, directors, and crew members. Many found him difficult to work with, especially during shoots where he disagreed with the script or direction. Bogart had a sharp tongue and wasn't afraid to express his disdain for actors he considered untalented or unprofessional. He also drank heavily, which sometimes led to on-set tension and unpredictable behavior. His marriage to actress Mayo Method was famously stormy and fueled his reputation as someone who lived in constant conflict. Though later admired for his honesty and anti-Hollywood attitude, Bogart often clashed with studio heads and had a reputation for being stubborn and controlling. Some saw him as principled, others, as a troublemaker who could derail a production with his moods. Despite this, his performances remained magnetic, and his popularity endured. Still, many who worked closely with him would describe Bogart as a man whose talent was undeniable, but whose off-screen behavior made him one of the more difficult stars of his era.